Welcome back to the family table. My name is Michelle. I'm a registered dietitian, and today we're talking all about infant sleep and starting solid foods. So if you're a sleep-deprived parent, you're going to want to pay attention to this one. There's been a recent study out of the UK that's been claiming that starting solids earlier helps babies to sleep longer. So making the headlines and grabbing the attention of lots of sleep-deprived parents. So we're here to review the study and what it actually means for you. There's long been the belief that babies wake up in the night because they're hungry, and maybe giving them some solid foods will help them to feel fuller longer and therefore help them to sleep longer, and by extension, sleep-deprived parents also get to sleep longer too. The current recommendations around starting solids by Health Canada, the American Academy of Pediatrics, World Health Organization, and others is exclusive breastfeeding or formula feeding until about 6 months of age, followed by introducing solids when baby is showing developmental signs of readiness. In this particular study, they started solid foods around 3 months of age, and they found that the babies who were introduced to solid foods earlier tended not only to sleep longer, but also woke less often in the night too. Sounds great, right? Well, there's valid reasons that the guidelines suggest to wait until about 6 months of age. But first, let's backtrack and take a look at this study first. So this study comes from the UK as part of the Inquiring About Tolerance study, or EAT study, that was originally designed to look at the effect of introducing allergenic foods to babies earlier and see if that had an effect on development of food allergies. This study comes as an extension of that study, using the data that was collected for the EAT study, focused specifically about sleep habits for these 1,300 infants who were either introduced to solids at 3 months of age or at 6 months of age. Now the headlines are going to tell you that the babies who were introduced to solid foods at 3 months of age slept significantly longer than the babies who were introduced at the standard 6 months of age, and they were, sleeping through the night. They had no problems at all. But looking at the actual study tells a slightly different story. So the early introduction group slept an average of 7.3 minutes longer per night than the standard introduction group. At its absolute peak, around 6 months of age, when the other group was starting solid foods, the early introduction group was sleeping about 16 minutes longer per night than the other. In terms of waking up at night, they found the standard introduction group was waking about 2 times a night, whereas the early introduction group was waking up about 1.74 times per night. Also, there was no difference found in daytime sleep. So let's think about this a little bit more. The early introduction group slept significantly longer than the standard introduction group, a grand total of 7.3 minutes on average. Now, I get it. As a sleep-deprived parent, 7.3 minutes, or maybe at its maximum 16 extra minutes of sleep, kind of sounds like heaven. But you may want to hold off on giving your 3-month-old some dinner just yet. First, let's look at what the findings of the actual EAT study were. Was there actually any benefit of introducing solid foods to these 3-month-olds? As it turns out, no. The EAT study actually showed no efficacy of introducing allergenic foods at 3 months versus at 6 months. That said, the study did have a lot of limitations. In particular, there was a lot of issue with adherence to the protocol. It was hard to fit that many allergenic foods into a 3-month-old baby within a short time span. The babies who were at higher risk of developing food allergies in the first place tended to be the ones who developed food allergies at all, including the ones who had moderate to severe eczema at enrollment and people who were members of certain ethnic groups. What's interesting to note is that breastfeeding rates between the early intervention group and the standard intervention group were not very different. Also interesting is that the actual amount of solid foods that they were eating around 6 months of age, whether in the early introduction group or the standard, were not very different at all. So I don't know about you, but from what I've observed, 6-month-old babies tend not to eat a whole lot to begin with when they're first starting out. So this makes me think that those 3 to 6-month-olds probably weren't eating a whole lot to begin with. They weren't being filled up. Now, for you parents who've been urged to start solids earlier because my baby's too big, breast milk isn't enough for them, or my baby is too small, breast milk isn't enough for them, you'll be delighted to know that the study also did not find any difference in anthropometrics between either introduction group when they were about 1 year old. So that means whether they got solids earlier or later, it didn't produce bigger or smaller babies. So if there was no difference in allergies, no difference in breastfeeding rates, and a significant 7-minute difference in sleep habits, then introducing solids early is a really great thing to do, right? Let's think again. As a dietitian who works with babies on a regular basis, I still stick to the guidelines of introducing solids when baby is showing developmental signs of readiness, usually around 6 months of age. The main reason is safety. One of the main signs of readiness for starting solids is being able to sit unassisted with full trunk support. And this is a safety mechanism against choking. A baby who's able to sit with full trunk support is better able to protect their airway. A baby who's kind of slumped over like this may have more risk of choking and aspiration. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know very many 3-year-olds who are able to have full trunk support and sit independently. Most 3-year-olds are only just working on head and neck control, let alone the rest of their torso. Definitely not ready for solid foods. Another major sign of readiness is loss of the tongue thrust reflex. So the tongue thrust is the thing that happens when you try to put something into a baby's mouth and they go, and their tongue sticks out and shoots that object back out. This is again a protective mechanism against choking when baby is not ready to start taking solid foods. This tongue thrust reflex tends to disappear around 4 to 6 months of age, which is typically when we hear of baby starting solid foods. So something tells me that those 3-month-olds in the study probably still had the tongue thrust reflex, but were still being force-fed the foods. Now, that may not be the best way to start your child off with a healthy relationship with food. Now, this study also had its limitations. The authors themselves note that there may be a bias there in the fact that the sleep data was collected by a subjective survey. Mothers were asked how long did their baby sleep, did they perceive any major sleep issues, and about the mother's quality of life related to sleep as well. It wasn't actual clinical data about baby sleep. So that said, because there's been this long-held belief that if I give my baby solid foods, they'll sleep through the night, there is that possibility that the mothers may have been biased by that and reported better outcomes for baby sleep, even when perhaps there wasn't really that big of a difference. The results also didn't control for other sleep factors, things like baby sleep location, how they're put to sleep, if they're nursed to sleep or if they're independent with their sleep, and other things that may affect a baby's sleep. There was overall data available, but it wasn't divided by group, so it's difficult to make any comparisons. It did note that babies who had moderate to severe eczema at enrollment at 3 months of age were much more likely to wake more frequently during the night. Also, babies who slept in their parents' room woke up 1.28 times more often than babies who slept in their own room. And babies who fell asleep independently, as opposed to being nursed or rocked to sleep, slept 50 minutes longer than babies who needed help to go to sleep. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot more significant to me than 7 minutes. I also found the lack of difference in daytime sleep very interesting. Usually when parents introduce solid foods, they tend to do it around morning or afternoon when baby is in a better mood to try solid foods and learn a new skill. So you would think that if solid foods were responsible for the increased sleep, that daytime sleep would have also been affected. Now, parents know that babies wake up in the middle of the night for all kinds of reasons aside from hunger. They're cold, they're hot, they're itchy, they're lonely, they're scared, they miss you, they heard a noise, they farted and woke themselves up, or sometimes they're just waking up for absolutely no reason at all. Waking up in the night at 6 months of age is completely normal and expected. And as many parents can attest, starting solids does not necessarily mean that baby is going to sleep any longer. My kids slept worse because of tummy troubles and constipation. Now, at the end of the day, you're the parent and you know your child best and what's best for them. But when you hear sensational headlines like this, take a step back, do your research, and kind of think it through, exactly like what you're doing by watching this video. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, and make sure to come back to check out the family table again. Have a great day.